Welcome to my channel. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the stories. My cousin wants to marry the intruder just because he's handsome. At midnight, a stranger burst into my cousin's room. She screamed bloody murder, begging me to save her. I grabbed a kitchen knife and entered a life and death struggle with the intruder, while my cousin hid in her bedroom, refusing to lift a finger. I ended up taking a brutal blow to the back of my head, which left me with permanent cognitive impairment, early-onset dementia. She, however, didn't have a scratch on her. Once she realized the intruder was a handsome man, she actually opened the door and let him go. When the police questioned her about his description, she claimed she hadn't seen his face. Later, her reputation was so ruined that she couldn't find a husband, becoming the town's laughingstock, an old maid. She blamed me for it, claiming I ruined her chance to sleep with a hottie, and that reporting it to the police gave her a bad name. She nursed a deep grudge. Under the guise of visiting me, she kicked my parents out of the house, shoved my head into a basin of water, and drowned me. A new life begins. I am back to the very night she screamed for help. Her piercing cries echo through the night, jolting me awake. The sensation of drowning is still so vivid I can feel the agonizing breathlessness. It's as if an invisible hand is squeezing my heart, tightening inch by inch until it's completely crushed. The scenes from my previous life are etched into my mind. Those throat-tearing screams and pitiful sobs used to make my heart soften. I couldn't bear to watch the sister I grew up with be violated. Back then, I knew the police were minutes away, and I feared they would be too late. Without a second thought, I called 911 and charged into her room with a kitchen knife. I flipped the light switch, exposing the intruder. But the moment my cousin saw his face, her resistance vanished. The man was handsome, exactly her type. She stared at him, dazed, forgetting the peril she was in. Facing him, a man a head taller than me and twice my size, my hand began to shake. I summoned every ounce of courage and yelled, "I've called the police. If you want to live, get out now." I stepped aside, clearing the path to the door. I knew I was no match for him. I was bluffing, hoping he'd take the exit. It was a cowardly move, but the safest way to minimize the damage. He hesitated, seemingly considering flight. But at that moment, my cousin, who had been trembling behind my back, suddenly found a surge of bravado. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path. With her head held high, she barked, "You're not going anywhere. I've seen your face. You think you can just run away." In an instant, the man's eyes turned feral. He delivered a vicious kick that sent my cousin flying. Seizing the moment I faltered, he wrenched the knife from my hand. He swung it wildly at her as she lay on the floor. Terrified, she wailed like a wounded animal and scrambled behind me, grabbing my legs. The first slash caught my arm, nearly severing it. I kicked him hard in the groin. While he writhed on the floor in pain, I clutched my bleeding arm and bolted toward my bedroom to hide. My cousin tried to follow, but as she was halfway through the door, he grabbed her by the hair and dragged her back toward the living room. Ignoring my mangled arm, I lunged for her legs. We entered a desperate tug of war, but I was far too weak. I could only watch in horror as she was dragged away. I was exhausted, reaching the point of giving up just to save my own skin. But seeing her sobbing, reaching out to me for help, I gritted my teeth. I remembered another knife in the kitchen and ran for it. Just as I grabbed it, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the living room. My cousin had bitten a chunk of flesh out of his thigh. He let go in agony, and she sprinted into my bedroom, locking the door behind her. I stood frozen in the hallway, knife in hand. Finding his original prey gone, the man turned his predatory gaze on me. I was petrified. He blocked the exit to the living room, forcing me back into the kitchen. I slammed the door shut, but it was just flimsy frosted glass. He began hacking at the door. I watched the cracks spread like a spiderweb until crash. The glass shattered. He lunged in like a rabid beast. My mind went blank. I swung the knife blindly, screaming for my cousin to help, but then came the blow to the back of my head. I collapsed into a pool of blood, consciousness fading. My cousin never appeared. The sound of sirens downstairs made him freeze. His knife was at my chest, but he didn't have time to finish the job. He frantically wiped his fingerprints, then turned on the gas stove, intending to blow the house sky high to erase the evidence. As he prepared to flee, my cousin stepped out of the room. Hearing the sirens, for reasons unknown, she didn't stop him. She enthusiastically opened the front door for him. He slipped into the night with ease. Looking at me lying still in my own blood, she didn't call an ambulance. Instead, she calmly went to her room, changed into a clean outfit, applied light makeup, and then leisurely opened the door for the police. When they asked if anyone was hurt, she instinctively shook her head, physically blocking the view of the kitchen. Luckily, a sharp-eyed female officer noticed blood on the shattered glass. She pushed my cousin aside, entered the kitchen, and saved my life just as I was taking my last breaths. She also managed to shut off the gas and open the windows, preventing an explosion. I was rushed to the ER. Meanwhile, the other officers questioned my cousin. She lied through her teeth, claiming she hadn't seen the culprit. Due to a lack of evidence, the case went cold. I became the sole victim of this assault. Because she had intentionally hidden my injuries, I missed the golden hour for treatment. The doctors said the hematoma in my brain had crushed my nerves. I was a girl who had just been accepted into a PhD program at Harvard. I had a brilliant future, and it all collapsed because of one night. My parents couldn't give up on me. They brought me back to our village to care for me, tirelessly seeking justice online. The case of the home invasion and assault went viral for a while. Eventually, because of her foul reputation, no one would marry my cousin. She became a bitter spinster, the joke of the village. She truly believed I had ruined her chance with a handsome man, and that my reporting the crime had shamed her. One day, a kind stranger online messaged my parents saying they had seen the culprit. My parents rushed to the police station 10 miles away. That's when my cousin came to visit. I was sitting at the door, drooling, eating snacks, thinking my parents had sent someone to play with me. I smiled and handed her a handful of peeled likies. With a look of pure disgust, she slapped my hand away, grabbed my neck and shoved my head into a wash basin. There was only a few inches of water, but it was enough to drown me. I struggled, crying out for my parents, but they were miles away, waiting for a tipster who was actually my cousin in disguise. After she killed me, she dumped my body in the small ditch in front of the house to make it look like an accidental drowning. My soul drifted into the air, watching my parents collapse in grief. The hatred in my heart reached its boiling point. "Clara!" My cousin's frantic scream yanks me back from the horrific memory. I touch the back of my head. It's smooth and whole, no gash, no indentation. I realize then, I've been reborn. I am back 3 years ago, on the night the stranger broke in. Right now, her room is still pitch black. She hasn't realized yet that the man trying to assault her is handsome, so she is still screaming for me to save her. How foolish I was in my past life, risking my life for her, only to end up disabled and then murdered by her hand. I hadn't seen the big picture then. I didn't know she'd fallen for the criminal from the start. All her stupid actions were intentional. Intentionally not saving me, intentionally letting me die in the kitchen, intentionally lying to the police, and finally, killing me. Every bit of it was hers, partly out of fear, but mostly out of pure, calculated spite. She is the kind of person whose morals follow her eyes, a girl obsessed with romance novels and devoid of empathy. This level of cold-blooded ingratitude must have offended the heavens enough to give me a second chance. This time, even if that man assaults her to death or hacks her into pieces, I won't lift a finger. Her screams are giving me a headache. In my last life, they made my heart race. Now they're just annoying. I put on my Bluetooth headphones, crank the volume to the max, and select a cheerful song to celebrate my successful rebirth. The upbeat melody rings in my ears, harmonizing with the squeals, like a stuck pig coming from the next room. It's absolutely wonderful. In less than 10 minutes, the noise stops. Fearing a change in plans, I press a paper cup against the wall to eavesdrop. My cousin, Cynthia Carter, is sobbing and pleading with the man. "Please spare me. My cousin is in the next room. She's 100 times prettier than I am. I'll lure her out for you. She has a great body." Hearing this, a chill runs down my spine. I grit my teeth until they chatter. I wonder, did she say those exact words in my previous life? If I hadn't charged in with that knife, would the outcome have been worse than just a blow to the head? It seems the intruder was swayed by Cynthia's words. Footsteps echo in the living room. The front door opens and closes. He's faking his departure. Then, knock, knock, knock. A tapping at my door. When I don't answer, Cynthia starts cursing. "Clara Anderson, how long are you going to hide? The bad man is gone. I was just attacked and you're playing dead. Now that he's gone, get out here and take me to the hospital." I don't believe a word of her lies. I trust my eyes. Through the crack under the door, I can clearly see 2 shadows standing there. The thief hasn't left. She's trying to lure me out with a "he's gone" lie, then use a moral guilt trip to force me to help. If I open that door, I'm handing them my life. I don't need to imagine how badly that ends. No matter how much she coaxes, screams or begs, I remain silent. My door is dead-bolted. He can't get in easily. Besides, I called the police the moment I woke up. They said they're on their way. If I just hold out, I'll change my fate. But that's not enough. The man won't give up that easily. So I decide to go on the offensive. I'll pretend to believe her to stabilize his ego, then make my move. I'm so sorry, Cynthia. I fell asleep. Are you okay? Are you badly hurt? Should I call the police? I can't find my glasses. I think I left them in the living room. Why is it so dark out there? I'll change and take you to the hospital. Can you find my glasses for me? I'm wearing my glasses, of course. I only said that to lure Cynthia into turning on the lights. Once the lights are on, she'll see the face of her attacker. To be fair, this man isn't handsome at all. He's dark-skinned, scrawny, with a rat-like face, beady eyes, a snub nose, and a puckered mouth, though he is quite tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches. But that is exactly Cynthia's type. With her shallow lookism, I know she'll lose her mind the moment she sees him. In my last life, I stood in her way, and she regretted it forever. This time I'll let her throw herself into his arms, and see if the ending is as sweet as her fantasies. I spoke naturally, leaving no room for suspicion. The man didn't dare break the door down because I still had my phone in my hand. He knew I'd call the police if he pushed. Sure enough, Cynthia hesitated, then said, "Don't call the cops, I'm only lightly scratched." "But I'm scared, I want you out here with me." "I'll find your glasses." "Hurry up and change." A shadow moved away from my door. The man sent her to flip the switch while he, let's call him Mike, lurked by the door, waiting for his prey. Little does he know he's about to become her prey. The living room lights flickered on, white light pouring through the gap under my door. The square energy-saving lamp illuminated the room like broad daylight. Cynthia, pretending to find my glasses, turned back toward my door. She looked up and came face to face with the man. They both froze, because the creature in front of them defied every standard of feminine beauty. My cousin's looks are hard to describe accurately, but one story says it all. When we were kids, we went to my uncle's farm to help with the pigs. She wore a pale pink shirt, almost the color of raw pork. Before entering the pen, the worker tied a bright red ribbon around her wrist, carefully tied in a bow. When it was my turn, he just glanced at me and gave me nothing. My cousin thought she was the favorite and bragged about it for days. I was jealous, so I asked the worker why I didn't get a bow. He replied nonchalantly, "Oh, my eyes aren't what they used to be." I tied that ribbon so I wouldn't accidentally mix your cousin up with the pigs. I was speechless. From then on, I never wanted a red bow again. Cynthia was an only child. My aunt and uncle felt guilty that she was unconventionally attractive, so they spoiled her rotten. She got whatever she wanted. They raised her like a princess, though they couldn't give her the face to match. Consequently, her dating life was a series of train wrecks. Men love with their eyes, and while she loved hotties, hotties only loved beauties. But Cynthia never grasped that simple truth. She thought she was a bombshell. The moment she saw Mike, she couldn't help herself. She couldn't reach his face because she was too short, so she reached for other parts. The intruder thought, all girls are the same in the dark, but with the lights on, he looked like he was losing his will to live. Cynthia actually winked at him, trying to mimic a boss babe from a romance novel. "Hey, handsome Tildy, I'll give you another chance. Want to keep going?" The man looked like he was having a mental breakdown. He grabbed his sleeves to pull them down, using both hands to cover his key areas. They were locked in a bizarre standoff. From inside my room, I called out, "Cynthia, did you find the glasses? I'm changed. Can I come out now?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were sparkling. She was practically vibrating with excitement. She dove into the man's arms, sniffing him like he was an addictive drug. Even as he held a knife to her throat, trying to push her away, she didn't panic. There was no fear in her eyes, only obsession. Finally reaching his limit, the man shoved her off and turned to run. But just as his hand touched the doorknob, my voice rang out from behind the door, cold as a ghost. "I've recorded your face clearly on video. If you run, I'm calling the police immediately. Be smart, stay and continue with my cousin. Otherwise, get ready to rot in a cell until you're old." The man froze. He turned around, his face a mask of crying without tears. He clasped his hands together, practically begging Cynthia. Mom, please, let me go. I was wrong. I won't do it again. Just take my first time as a mistake and let me go. His eyes were red, brimming with tears, his dark face flushing like baked clay. It was likely the weakest moment of his life, but he didn't realize that to Cynthia Carter, a hottie's tears were an aphrodisiac. She couldn't resist. She pulled out her phone, snapped what she thought was a perfect artistic photo, sent it to me, then waved the phone in his face with a predatory grin. I have a new condition, she said firmly. I want to marry you. If you dare refuse, my cousin will send that photo straight to the police immediately. The intruder's world completely collapsed. Cynthia Carter dragged him into the bedroom and forced him onto the bed. For the next 30 minutes, agonizingly unpleasant sounds echoed through the walls. During the act, she even secretly recorded a video as insurance for the future. Finally, Cynthia Carter lit a cigarette with a look of immense satisfaction, leaning against the headboard and exhaling smoke like a victorious queen. The intruder, meanwhile, looked as if his soul had been sucked dry. His eyes were vacant, lying in her arms like a breathing corpse, 2 trails of tears slowly rolling down his face. The naive thief thought that enduring Cynthia Carter was the end of his ordeal. But before he could even pull his pants up, a series of frantic thuds erupted at the door, making him jump out of his skin. The police had arrived. In a panic, he scrambled off the bed, scurrying around the room like a lost dog searching for an exit. Cynthia looked at him as if he were a rare specimen, her eyes full of adoration for her silly hunk. But this apartment was on the 15th floor and the windows were fitted with anti-theft bars. The only way out was the front door. Having no choice, he whetted his teeth and prepared to bolt past the officers. But as he swung the door open, he ran straight into a pair of strong arms. Within 10 seconds, a squad of officers swarmed in, efficiently suppressing him and clicking the cuffs shut. Only then did I step out of my room, calm and collected. Once the police confirmed I was the caller and no one had been killed, they took all three of us to the station for questioning. Looking at the man who had caused my tragedy in the previous life, now looking like a mangled mutt with a face like ash, I felt a profound sense of relief. In this life I hadn't died. Instead, I had struck back at everyone who had ever harmed me in a way no one could have predicted. Cynthia Carter's romance brain went into overdrive. When the police asked about her relationship with Haliska Buteo, she clung to his arm, her eyes shimmering like a love-struck teenager. We're getting married. He's my boyfriend. If I hadn't lived through a past life, I might have thought he had actually cast a spell on her. Haliska Buteo, however, loathed Cynthia to his very core, constantly trying to shake her off, but she was like permanently trying to shake her off. The more he pushed, that she was like permanent glue. Finally, the more he pushed, the tighter she stuck. In the middle of the crowded station, he swung his fist and punched her square in the face. The police immediately grew suspicious of Cynthia's original statement. The police immediately grew suspicious of Cynthia's original statement. Pulling the man away and separating them for reinterrogation. What exactly is the relationship between Cynthia Carter and Ms. Anderson? What exactly is the relationship between Cynthia Carter and Haliska Buteo? I am so sorry, officers. Faking a look of panicked misunderstanding that wasted your time. I am so sorry, officers. My cousin brought her boyfriend home without telling me first. They had a bit of an argument. My cousin brought her boyfriend home without telling me first. They had a bit of an argument. And I thought he was an intruder. As a result, no charges were filed. He really is her boyfriend. Haliska Buteo was released. My mistake. The moment they stepped out of the station, no charges were filed. Cynthia's hand away. Haliska Buteo was released as if the devil were chasing him. The moment they stepped out of the station, but what good was running? Cynthia's hand away. I had found his ID card as if the devil were chasing him, dragging him around. But what good was running? Out of his pocket. I had found his ID without him noticing. While Cynthia was dragging him around, Cynthia still had the hot video from the bedroom. Deciding to be helpful without him noticing, I hailed a taxi for the two of them. Cynthia still had the hot video from the Affairs Bureau to register their marriage. Deciding to be helpful to the very end, in this life, I hailed a taxi for the two of them. Cynthia Carter finally married the Civil Affairs Bureau to register their marriage. Together, in this life, a love with my full support, Cynthia Carter finally married the thief she was so obsessed with. Together, the first thing Cynthia did after getting married was demand to use my rented apartment as their honeymoon suite. But selfish people know no gratitude. Since I had been accepted into grad school and had a few months before enrollment, was demand to use my rented apartment as their honeymoon suite. I had been sharing the place with a colleague, but she had moved for a different job, kindly paying her share of the remaining 2 months' rent before leaving. During those months, I had been sharing the place with a colleague, but she had moved failing over 100 blind dates, kindly paying her share of the remaining 2 months' rent before leaving. She had practically scoured every eligible bachelor within 10 miles, failing over 100 blind dates. City, she either found men ugly or they found her bizarre. Vehemently. She had her parents and scoured every eligible bachelor within 10 miles. Valuing family ties
Hearing
above
I was interning in the
gave her the
city,
green light
she
on my
clamoured to
behalf.
move in.
Her parents wanted her to find work in the city,
but her parents
so she
and
wouldn't
mine
be
pleaded
mocked
with
as a
me.
leech.
The
During
elders,
blind dates,
valuing family
they even
ties
stuffed a
above
decent
all,
amount of
gave
cash
her the
into her
green
pocket
light on my
telling her
behalf.
to share the
Her
rent and
parents
utilities
wanted
with
her
me.
to find work in the
The
city,
result, so she wouldn't be
she
mocked as
arrived
a leech
empty-handed
during blind dates.
for nearly a month.
She
even
didn't
stuffed
pay
a
a
decent
dime.
amount of
When I
cash
reminded
into her
her,
pocket,
she just laughed
telling
it off,
her to
saying
share
she
the
was
rent
broke,
and utilities
even
with
as
me.
she ordered luxury
The
takeout
result?
every night. She
Seafood,
arrived
sushi,
empty-handed.
Japanese cuisine.
For nearly a
The
month,
front door
she
was a
didn't pay a
graveyard of her
dime.
delivery boxes
When I
and
reminded
online
her, she
shopping
just laughed it
packages.
off, saying
She
she
clearly
was
had
broke,
money,
even as
she
she
just
ordered
refused to
luxury
pay.
takeout every
As if
night.
living for free wasn't
Seafood,
enough,
sushi,
she now wanted to kick
Japanese
me out to
cuisine.
turn the flat
The
into
front
her
door was a
marital
graveyard
home.
of her
I
delivery
refused,
boxes and
obviously,
online shopping
and told her
packages.
to move out
She
immediately.
clearly had money,
realizing she
she
was
just
being
refused to pay.
unreasonable.
As
She
if living
feigned
for free
obedience,
wasn't enough,
saying she'd be
she now
packed
wanted
by the
to kick
time I
me
got
out
off
to turn
work.
the flat into her marital
But when
home.
I returned home,
I refused,
exhausted,
obviously,
my
and
belongings
told her
had
to
been
move out
tossed into the
immediately.
hallway in a chaotic
Realizing
heap.
she was
The
being
locks had been
unreasonable,
changed.
she feigned
My
obedience,
key was useless,
saying she'd be packed by
I
the
called
time I
her.
got off work. She picked up, but
when
didn't
I
speak.
returned home,
I could only hear
exhausted,
heavy breathing
my
and soft
belongings
moans.
had been tossed into the
I
hallway in a
screamed in
chaotic
rage,
heap,
but my
the
voice
locks
only
had been
served
changed.
as background noise
My key
for
was
their
useless.
intimate play. Not
I
satisfied
called
with
her.
just audio, she
She
switched
picked
to a
up,
video
but
call.
didn't speak.
On the
I
screen,
could only
the two
hear
of them
heavy
were
breathing
entwined
and
on my
soft
bed,
moans.
reaching for a bottle on the
I
nightstand.
screamed in rage.
It wasn't
but my
lubricant.
voice only served as
It was a bottle of
background
super glue
noise
I had
for their
decanted
intimate
into an
play.
old bottle
Not
because the
satisfied
original
with just
packaging was
audio,
messy.
she switched to a video
I tried to
call.
warn her, but she hung
On
up.
the screen, the
Shortly
two of
after,
them were entwined
an
on my
ambulance
bed,
appeared at the
reaching for a
complex.
bottle on the
A pair of
nightstand.
stuck lovers were
It
carried
wasn't
out on a
lubricant.
stretcher by paramedics
It
who
was
were
a bottle
visibly
of super
struggling
glue
not
I
to
had
laugh.
decanted into an old
Cynthia
bottle
Carter,
because the original
shameless as
packaging
ever,
was messy.
didn't try to hide
I
her
tried to
face.
warn her, but she hung up.
She threw off the
Shortly
coat
after,
Talisker had used
an
to cover his
ambulance
head and
appeared
shrieked
at the
at me.
complex.
You did this
A
on
pair of
purpose.
stuck lovers
You're a
were
wicked
carried
woman,
out on a stretcher
jealous
by
because I have a
paramedics who were
handsome
visibly
husband.
struggling not to
You
laugh.
bitch. Once I'm
Cynthia
better,
Carter,
I'm going to
shameless
kill
as
you.
ever,
Didn't
Basin
try
had
to
deranged
hide her
shouting.
face. I quietly wiped
She
a fake
threw off
tear
the
and
coat
turned my
Talisker
phone
had used
screen
to cover
around.
his head and shrieked
Immediately,
at me.
my uncle's
You did
voice
this on
boomed from the
purpose.
other end of a
You're a
video
wicked
call.
woman,
His face
jealous
masked
because
with
I have a
fury.
handsome husband.
You brat.
You bitch.
Who do you think you're going to
Once
kill?
I'm better, I'm
You've
going to
humiliated
kill you.
this whole family.
Facing her deranged shouting,
Just wait until I get
quietly
there.
wiped
I'll
a
break
fake
your
tear
legs.
and turned my phone screen
My uncle
around.
immediately hung up and
Immediately,
boarded
my
the
uncle's
fastest
voice
high-speed
boomed
train
from the
from the
other end
village
of
to
a
the
video
hospital.
call.
His face a
My
mask
aunt
of fury.
followed, alternating
You
between
brat.
frantic apologies to
Who do
my
you think you're
parents
gonna
and
kill?
worrying about her daughter.
You've humiliated
My parents
this
had
whole
originally
family.
intended to keep up
Just
appearances
wait until I get
and
there.
be
I'll break
forgiving,
your legs.
but after hearing her recorded
My
death
uncle
threats,
immediately
they couldn't
hung up
pretend
and boarded
anymore.
the fastest
Their
high-speed
pained
train
smiles
from the
looked
village
worse
to the
than
hospital.
crying.
At that
My
moment,
aunt followed,
they regretted helping
alternating
her
between
even more
frantic
than I did.
apologies to my
As the
parents and
stretcher was
worrying
wheeled
about her
through the
daughter.
complex square,
My
the
parents
crowd
had
gathered.
originally
I
intended to
decided
keep
the
up
social
appearances
death wasn't
and
complete,
be
so I
forgiving,
borrowed a brass
but
gong
after
from a
hearing her
nearby
recorded
shopkeeper
death threats
and followed the
they couldn't
stretcher,
pretend anymore.
beating it rhythmically
Their
like a
pained
festival
smiles
parade.
looked worse
The
than
neighbors,
crying.
thinking there was a
At
wedding,
that moment,
rushed over
they
to look,
regretted
only
helping
to
her
witness
even
the
more than
classic
I did.
scene.
As
The
the
women
stretcher
blushed and
wheeled
gossiped.
through the
The
complex
men pulled
square,
out their
the
phones to
crowd
record
called
the beauty
I
of
decided
life.
the social
The two
death wasn't
protagonists
complete,
on the stretcher
so I borrowed a
lost all
brass
their
gong
bravado,
from a nearby
wishing the
shopkeeper
ground would
and
swallow
swallowed
the
them
stretcher.
whole.
They felt a
Beating it
sense of
rhythmically like a
reprieve
festival
only when they
parade.
were finally
The neighbors,
loaded into the ambulance.
thinking there was a wedding,
They didn't
rushed
know the
over
real
to look,
storm was
only
coming.
to witness the
At
classic
the hospital,
scene.
the
The
doctors were
women blushed
flabbergasted
and gossiped.
They had
The
never
men
seen a
pulled
case
out their
like
phones
it.
to
They
record
eventually
the
had to
beauty
sedate
of
both
life.
of them.
The
The
two
two
protagonists
protagonists
on
peeled
the
the
stretcher
super glue off their
lost all their
bodies.
bravado.
By then, my
wishing the
uncle had
ground would
arrived.
swallow them whole.
I met him
They
at the
felt a
gates.
sense of reprieve
The danger
only
has
when they were
passed.
finally
The doctor
loaded
said.
into the ambulance.
My uncle pulled me
But
aside
they didn't
to get
know
the
the
full
real
story.
storm was
I
coming.
told him everything.
At the
With a bit
hospital,
of added
the
flavour.
doctors were flabbergasted.
I told him how
They
she
had
lived
never
off
seen
me
a
for
case
free,
like it.
how she actively
They
pursued
eventually
her
had to
attacker,
sedate
how
both
she
of
forced
them
him to
to
marry her,
painstakingly
how she
peel
kicked
the
me out of
super
my
glue
own
off
home,
their
and how
bodies.
she used my
By
bed
then,
for her
my
activities,
uncle had arrived,
leading to the glue incident.
I met him at the gates.
I wiped
wiped my eyes with
The
a
danger
tissue.
has passed.
Uncle,
The doctor
I can
said.
handle her
My
hitting
uncle
me or
pulled me
stealing my
aside
room to get the full story.
But she shouldn't
I
blame
told
me
him
for her own
everything.
mistakes.
With a bit of
She
added
went
flavor.
into my room and used my things
I told him
without
how she
asking,
lived off me for
and then
free,
accused me of
how she
sabotaging
actively
her.
pursued her
My
attacker,
uncle's face
how she
went
forced
from
him to
pale
marry
to
her,
a deep,
how she kicked me out of my own home,
When the
and how
surgery
she
light
used my
went
bed
out,
for
he
her
stood up and
activities,
scanned the
leading
hallway.
to the glue incident.
I accidentally
I
dropped
wiped
a
my
baseball
eyes with
bat
a tissue
out of my backpack.
Uncle,
It rolled
I can
right to
handle
his
her
feet.
hitting me or
He picked
stealing
it
my
up,
room,
swung it a few
but
times
she
to
shouldn't
test the
blame
weight,
me for her
and
own
walked into the
mistakes.
recovery room
She
without
went
a
into my
word.
room and
My
used my
uncle
things
was a
without
veteran.
asking.
He once
And then
killed a
accused
wild
me of
boar with his bare
sabotaging her.
hands.
My
Worried
uncle's
he might
face went
actually
from
kill her,
pale to a
I
deep,
followed him
throbbing
in.
red.
When
Cynthia
the surgery
Carter had
light
just
went
woken
out,
up.
he stood up and scanned the
Nurse,
hallway.
she barked.
I
Move
accidentally
me to my
dropped a
boyfriend's
baseball
bed.
bat out of my backpack.
It's uncomfortable being
It rolled
apart.
right to his feet.
The nurse
He
rolled
picked
her
it up,
eyes.
swung
The
it a
doctor
few
spent
times
all
to
night
test the weight,
separating you.
and walked into the
You want to
recovery
be
room
stuck
without
again?
a word.
Why,
My
uncle
uncle was
was
a
a veteran.
veteran. He
My
once
uncle
killed
was
a
shaking
wild
with
boar
shame.
with his bare hands.
Cynthia continued
Worried
to
he
babble,
might actually
unaware
kill her,
of the murderous
I followed
aura
him
behind
in.
her.
The baseball
Cynthia
bat finally
Carter had
came
just
down,
woken up.
thwack.
Nurse,
She screamed like a pig
barked.
being slaughtered.
Move me to my
Already
boyfriend's
in
bed.
pain from the surgery,
It's uncomfortable.
she could only
being
huddle
apart.
under the covers, wailing.
The nurse rolled her
Save
eyes.
me, Haliska.
The doctors spent
Save
all
me.
night separating
Haliska didn't
you.
want to get involved,
You
but
want
her
to be
screaming
stuck
was
again?
giving him a headache.
Why
so he
come
tried
to
to
the
block my
hospital at
uncle.
all? My
Seeing the
uncle was
criminal who
shaking
had
with
assaulted
shame.
his daughter, my
Cynthia
uncle
continued
continued
to
to
babble.
babble.
He turned the
Unaware
bat
of
on
the
Haliska.
murderous aura behind her.
1, 2,
The
three
baseball
blows
bat
rained
finally
down
came
until
down.
he was a bloody,
Whack.
bruised mess.
She screamed like a
Cynthia
pig being
cried out,
slaughtered.
"Stop it!
Already
He's my
in
husband.
pain from the surgery,
If you hit
she
him
could
again,
only huddle
I'm
under the
disowning
covers,
you."
wailing.
Haliska,
Save
nearly
me, Haliska.
unconscious,
Save
suddenly
me.
found a burst of
Haliska
strength
didn't want to
and
get
wrenched the
involved,
bat
but
away.
her screaming
The two
was
of
giving
them
him a
began
headache,
brawling
so he
in the
tried to
middle
block
of the
my
ward.
uncle. Seeing the
I tried
criminal
to
who
pull
had
Haliska
assaulted his
back, but
daughter,
Cynthia
my
lunged
uncle's
forward
rage
to grab my
peaked.
uncle's
He
arms,
turned the bat
causing
on
him
Haliska.
to take a few hits
1,
himself.
2, 3
My uncle's
blows
heart
rained down
turned to
until he
ice.
was a bloody,
Right there in the
bruised
hospital,
mess.
he declared.
As
Cynthia
of today,
cried out,
I
"Stop
have no
it.
daughter.
He's
Back
my
home,
husband.
he took his anger out on
If
my
you hit him
aunt,
again,
blaming her
I'm
for
disowning
spoiling the
you."
girl. Haliska,
A rotten
child,
child
is the product of a doting mother.
Suddenly found a
He
burst
yelled,
of strength and
"Let
wrenched the
her
bat
rot."
away.
The two of
Cynthia
them began
initially thought she
brawling
could
in
win
the
a
middle
war
of
of
the ward
attrition
and wait for them to
I tried
apologize.
to pull Haliska
but
back,
as soon
but
as my
Cynthia
uncle
lunged
lunged
forward
forward
to
to grab
walked
my
in.
uncle's arms,
The procedure
causing
is
him
done.
to take a few
Now,
hits himself.
let's settle the bill.
My uncle's
Cynthia's
heart
face
turned
went
to
white.
ice. Right
The
there
money
in the
her
hospital,
parents had
he
given her
declared,
was long gone.
As of today,
As for
I
Haliska,
have no
he
daughter.
was so broke he had
Back
to pay
home,
for a
he took his
lunchbox in
anger
18
out on my
installments,
aunt,
blaming
he had
her
only
for
agreed to
spoiling
marry
the
her
girl.
because I had
A
accidentally
rotten
let
child
slip
is the
that she was
product
an
of a
only
doting
child with a
mother,
wealthy
he
family.
yelled.
He had
Let
believed
her
it
rot.
after seeing her order
Cynthia
expensive
initially
seafood
thought
every
she
night.
could win a war
He
of
had married
attrition
her for the money
and wait for them to apologize.
Cynthia turned to me,
But as soon as my
shamelessly
uncle
asking
left,
for a
the
loan.
nurse walked in.
Clara,
It
the
was your
procedure
glue
is
that put us
done.
here.
Now,
You're
let's settle the
responsible.
bill.
Pay the
Cynthia's
bill.
face went
Also,
white. We're hungry.
The money
Order
her
us
parents had given
$200
her
worth
was
of
long
KFC.
gone.
As
Her
for
tone was
Haliska,
so
he
natural,
was so broke
as if
he
I
had to
were
pay
her
for a
servant.
lunchbox in
I didn't
18
say a word.
installments.
I just
He had
smiled
only
and
agreed
showed
to
her my
marry her
bank
because I
balance.
had
Tens
accidentally
of
let
thousands
slip
of dollars.
she was an
More than
only
enough to
child
cover
with a wealthy
everything.
family. Her eyes
He
lit
had
up with
believed
hope
it
after seeing her
What are you
order
smiling
expensive
at?
seafood every
I
night.
hissed.
He had married her
Don't
for the money.
misunderstand.
Cynthia
I'm
turned
just
to me,
looking for a wishing well
shamelessly
to throw
asking
this
for a
into.
loan. I'd rather
Clara,
drown this
it was
money
your
than give
glue
you
that
a
put us
cent.
here.
I
You're
turned and
responsible.
walked away. Pay the bill.
Cynthia
Also,
screamed in
we're
fury,
hungry,
but there was
order
nothing
us
she could do.
$200 worth of
Haliska,
KFC.
unable to stand
her
her
tone was
screeching,
so natural,
grabbed her phone
as
and
if
opened
I were
every
her
predatory
servant.
lending app
I
he
didn't
could
say a
find.
word. He took
I
out
just
high
smiled
interest
and
loans
showed her my
from
bank
multiple
balance,
platforms just to
tens of
cover the
thousands of
hospital bill.
dollars.
More than enough Seeing to
him
cover
solve the
everything.
problem,
Cynthia
eyes
looked
lit
at
up
him
with
with
hope.
renewed adoration.
What are you smiling
Haliska
at?
played the role
I
of the
hissed.
successful man.
Don't
See?
misunderstand.
It's easy to get
I'm
money
just
online.
looking for a wishing well to
You should
throw
go
this
home and
into.
steal your parents' phones
I'd
to
rather
take out a
drown
few
this
million
money
and
than
give
give
you
you
a
a
cent. Then we can buy
I
a
turned
house
and walked
We're
away.
married. We
Cynthia
can't live in a
screamed in
rental
fury,
forever, can we?
but there was nothing she could
Cynthia,
do.
with her
Haliska,
hollow brain,
unable to stand her
believed him
screeching,
instantly,
grabbed her phone
but
and
we
opened
don't have
every
jobs.
predatory lending app
How
he
will
could
we
find.
pay it back? He took out high
Haliska
interest loans
smirked.
from multiple
Pay it
platforms
back?
just to cover
These
the
are
hospital
illegal
bill.
black market apps.
Seeing him
You
solve
don't
the
have to
problem,
pay them back.
Cynthia looked at
Besides,
him with
your parents
renewed
are old.
adoration.
They'll be dead in a few
Haliska
years
played
anyway.
the role of the
Who's going to
successful man.
collect?
See?
Upon her release,
It's easy to
Cynthia
get money
went home
online.
to visit her parents.
You should go
In
home and
reality,
steal your
she
parents'
was a
phones
thief.
to take out a
She
few
stole their
million in
phones,
loans,
logged into predatory
then
apps,
we can
and took
buy a
out
house.
massive loans.
We're married.
Transferring the money to
We
her
can't
own
live in
account
a
without a
rental
second
forever,
thought.
can we?
To her, her parents
Cynthia,
were just talking
with her
ATMs.
hollow brain, believed
She
him
rushed back to
instantly.
the city and used the
But
money
we
as a
don't
down
have
payment
jobs.
on a house.
How will we
Haliska,
pay it
hearing
back?
about the new house, became
Haliska
the
smirked.
perfect doting husband.
Pay it back?
They
These are
moved into
illegal
their
black
nest,
market apps.
living shamelessly on
You
borrowed
don't have
money.
to pay them back.
At first,
Besides,
the lenders
your
called
parents are
politely,
old,
but
they'll be
after a
dead
few
in a
missed
few years
payments,
anyway.
the tone changed.
Who's going to
When they
collect?
couldn't reach her, they
Upon her
printed
release,
flyers with Cynthia and her
went home
parents
to
to
visit
visit
her
her personal
parents.
info.
In reality,
plastering them all over
she
the
was a
village
thief.
gates. She
When
stole
my
their
uncle and
phones,
aunt saw the
logged
village's
into predatory
whispering,
apps,
they
and took out
finally
massive
realized
loans.
their own daughter had
Transferring the
stabbed
money
them in
to
the
her
back.
own account
My
without a
uncle was
second thought.
hospitalized
To
with
her, high blood pressure.
Her parents were just talking
My aunt
ATMs.
wailed all night.
She rushed back to the city and used the money as a down payment on a house. They hammered on their door and hung funeral
became the
wreaths at the
perfect
house.
doting
Driven
husband.
to the brink, they called
They
the police.
moved into their
the
nest,
investigation
living
revealed the loans
shamelessly
were
on
in
borrowed
Cynthia's
money
name with full authentication.
At first, the lenders
my uncle
called politely,
realized they
but
couldn't pay
after
it
a few
back,
missed
nor
payments,
could they control
the tone
her.
changed.
He
When
called
they couldn't
me,
reach her,
sobbing.
they printed flyers
Clara,
with Cynthia
is
and
there
her
anything you
parents'
can do?
faces and
Help
personal
me this
info,
once,
and I'll
plastering
owe
them
you
all
for
over the
life.
village gates. I
When
comforted
my
him
uncle
and
and
sent
aunt
enough
saw
money
the
to pay
villagers
off the
whispering,
principal. They
cutting
finally
off the lenders'
realized
ties to
their
my
own
uncle's
daughter
family.
had stabbed them in
They
the
had
back.
raised me after
My
all.
uncle was
I couldn't let them
hospitalized
drown in
with
the
high
mud she
blood
left
pressure.
behind. My aunt
As for
wailed all
Cynthia
night.
Carter,
After
being
being
disowned
disowned
and
and
cut
cut
off,
off, she begged for
but the
mercy,
lenders
but
didn't
no one
stop.
listened. They
The
hammered
landlord
on their
discovered
door
the
and
housing
hung
contract was
funeral
fraudulent
wreaths at the
and
house.
evicted them.
Driven to the
Their
brink,
honeymoon
they
home
called the
was gone.
police.
The
Burdened by
investigation
debt,
revealed the
Haliska
loans were in
Buteo
Cynthia's
finally
name
had
with
enough.
full authentication.
He vanished into the
My
night,
uncle
leaving
realized
her
they
behind.
couldn't pay it back.
Cynthia Carter
Nor could
lost
they control
everything.
her. Family,
He
money,
called
and
me,
love.
sobbing.
She moved into
Clara,
a squalid
is there
tenement,
anything you can
living
do?
on instant
Help me
noodles,
this once,
suffering from
and I'll owe you
untreated
for life.
infections because she had no
I
money for a
comforted
doctor.
him and sent enough money to
As
pay
for
off
me,
the principal.
after finishing grad
Cutting off
school,
the lenders'
I joined a
ties to my
top-tier
uncle's
firm.
family.
My
They had
career was
raised me
soaring.
after all.
I couldn't
let
live
them
in a
drown in the
spacious
mud she left
apartment,
behind,
free from leeches,
free
free
from
from
harassment,
Carter, and
after
free
being
from
traitors.
traitors and cut off.
Every morning,
She begged
the
for
sun
mercy,
fills my
but
home.
no one listened.
I look
The
in the mirror
landlord
and
discovered
smile.
the housing contract was
In this
fraudulent
life, I
and
live for
evicted them.
myself.
Their
The
honeymoon
end.
home was
Thanks
gone,
for listening.
burdened